Boom, and we're live. Thanks everybody for tuning in to another episode of Men with Purpose. Today, I have the privilege and the pleasure to be joined by Folsom. Philip has actually 30 plus years of experience in leadership. He's an anthropologist, an army veteran, and the CEO of WolfTribe. He's also the co-founder of K4 Men's Group, which stands for Kings of the Four Houses, which is, I think, based on the archetypes, and leads trauma and resilience work with veterans and first responders. Philip, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, pleasures don't mind. Let's just take a deep breath and just do a quick check-in, whatever is present for you right now. Anything that particularly resonates with you right now in this moment?
For me, there's a strong sacred purpose that runs through this work. And this work is in direct alignment with what I'm doing in my life. So this is just a natural extension of my career and my philosophical belief. And I do believe at some point that one of the big pillars of this conversation is that men are unfulfilled. Men are not appreciated. Men have a lack of purpose and meaning because their careers and life are not in alignment, with their passions. And really, my working definition of purpose is when passion serves people. And so if the career that you have, I won't even call it a career, a job. Your job is not serving either your passion or aligning with people, then it's inherently unfulfilling. And a life that is lacking in meaning, all of a sudden, there's no sense to the suffering. You make no sense of your suffering. There's no reason to even engage with shame or adversity or growth or any of that call to adventure, which is inherently heroic. And men have a strong heroic component, and that has been missing for a terribly long time.
Wow. Okay, we dove straight into it. I'm checking with a lot of gratitude and like eagerness to really start deep dive into this conversation. Since we already started a little bit based on what you've said, I've heard you in other interviews say that especially something around the culture, that honor-based culture has been lost. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that? What you mean by that?
Yeah, the honor-based culture is our old operating system. It means we are designed to be in collaborative, reciprocal, kinship-based organizations. And you could call that a tribe or a team or a village. And we draw most of our meaning from that type of community, because you're inherently embedded in a sense of belonging, and belonging drives resiliency, and it also drives meaning. It drives all of the things that are intrinsically motivating for men, but come from honor-based cultures, and that they come from something that's larger than ourselves. And the reason why we've lost our honor-based cultures is that it takes a tremendous amount of time and resources and intimacy to be able to maintain them. And so I just met you, and you and I don't have an honor-based culture because I don't know you and you don't know me. And I would pass you on the street and I wouldn't recognize you, and I would not cross the street to go say, hey, that's my brother, because we're strangers, and that makes us a pride-based culture. And pride-based cultures are what the majority of humanity currently has, because we're too big to maintain our honor-based cultures. And pride-based cultures are about the individual. It's about getting my needs met. It's about my career and my car and my house, and it's all my. So when my kingdom has collapsed down to just an individual person, or even a family is too small, like we need to be bigger than that. We don't really have the resources to be able to do large scale, significant things with our life. We also don't have safe and powerful men that we can use for accountability, for structure, for support. And we cannot discharge our shame, because shame is connected to this pride versus honor conversation. Shame is what I believe that you feel about me, as opposed to guilt, which is what I feel about myself. So if I have done something that's shameful, or I think might be shameful, then I feel like you think less of me. And that's a very, very powerful and scary thing for men, to believe that we have done something shameful or dishonorable, because it removes us from the tribe. And there's something deep inside of our brain, and it's called your amygdala or your limbic system. And that core smoke alarm gets triggered when we believe we are being removed or excommunicated from the tribe. So shame is connected to that. And I cannot get rid of my shame until I tell you, hey, I feel really bad about this thing. You know, I mean, I feel like I'm not enough, or I'm inadequate. And then you can say, thank you, or you are enough, or me too. Right? The moment that you go, I also feel inadequate and unappreciated and lost, then you and I now have discharged our shame, and it moves to grief. And grief is healthy. Grief is the natural, resilient processing of the inherent trauma that men take on as we move through our days. So the difference between shame and I guess the positive side of shame would be called accountability. Like if you told me I'm going to be working out every day and get in shape, and then I notice that you're not working out. Now, if we're part of an honor-based culture, then you don't take that as shame, right? You take that as thank you for the accountability. I was just going to the gym today, right? But if I'm not part of this honor-based culture and I say, hey, you haven't been to the gym in a while, now all of a sudden you feel ashamed. So shame and accountability are the same thing. The difference is what culture is providing that. And honor-based cultures for men are the source of all forms of heroism in our history. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, I've never heard. I've interviewed maybe roughly 35 men, and nobody ever put it to me that way in terms of honor-based culture and pride-based culture. So it's something I need to go back and re-listen and re-watch and rethink and like scratch my head, because I think that's a lot. I just want to take a step back slightly and deep dive a little bit more into your story and how did you end up where you are today? You know, the man that you are today, the leader that you are today. How did that start for you, this whole journey?
I grew up with a lot of pre-trauma, and pre-trauma are all of the I guess negative or traumatic events that happen when we're young men, and we all have pre-trauma. Even the women watching, you have pre-trauma, and some people have way more and some have less, and it's neglect or abuse or poverty or bullying, or you can't live in the world and not take on trauma. That's the nature of suffering, right? To buy a ticket for this ride, the cost of the ticket is suffering. So we all take on a certain amount of suffering and trauma. And it turns out that most of the veterans and first responders, the men who do warrior class things, have about 3 times the amount of pre-trauma than the average man. And there seems to be a few big variables about why high pre-trauma men go into warrior-based careers. One of that is that we tend to recreate what we know and what is familiar. So if you came from a chaotic background, you subconsciously are recreating what is familiar and comfortable for you. So it's one of the reasons why both men and women go to the same relationships over and over, and they loop through the same issues over and over. It's comfortable, and habits are simply patterns of behavior that are efficient. So it's much easier to do the same thing that you know. It doesn't take energy, right? Now, practices, which are completely different animals than habits, practices are not based on efficiency. In fact, it's the opposite. They're actually incredibly energy intensive because they're based on growth. Habits are easy and they're efficient, and it takes no thinking. Practices take a tremendous amount of energy to maintain. And it's one of the reasons why men cannot maintain their growth and their practices, whether that be physical, professional, spiritual, because we all get weak, we all get tired, we all get broken, we all get overwhelmed, and we collapse back to our habits. So we need other wolves in the pack to be able to hold us accountable. And this is why that accountability conversation is so important. We will never do significant things when we don't have a collection of men holding us accountable, inspiring us, celebrating us, and checking us. So anyway, I came from a lot of pre-trauma, and I'm one of the, like a lot of other men, I ended up in the military, and in my, you could call it a vision quest of exploring my life, it led me to a lot of things. Some worked and some didn't work. And the things that did work, I discovered worked for everyone. And those are the time-tested old things. It's not the pop culture, fads, new age fads, or pop culture men's work. The stuff that works is as old as we are. We have no idea where the archetypes came from. We have no idea where the hero's journey came from. It goes back into ancestral knowledge. It's ancient. So that was my first introduction to men's work, 30 years ago was, that's when Iron John came out. It's King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. It's when, Campbell, obviously Carl Jung is a huge part of that. All the philosophers, not only just the Stoic philosophers, but Nietzsche and all the rest of them. Those are all men who have been exploring men's work through whatever avenue. And what you'll discover is that there's basically three big systems or pillars that hold up men's work. And that's the very core of not only K4, but any good men's group is going to be anchoring to those they call it mythopoetics.
Mythopoetics. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we dive a little bit more into those three pillars, so people actually, especially men listening to it, and women for that same matter, can actually get a little bit more context about that?
And I will just say, just to the ladies, these pillars also are your pillars. They just have a different language. So we would call a innovative, expressive, vision-focused man a king. That's one of the masculine archetypes. Now, of course, you could be a queen and fulfill the same role in the tribe. In fact, when you go back far enough, many of our indigenous cultures, our old history, was a very matriarchal led society.
Really?
We have we have a very symbiotic and harmonious balance with matriarchy and patriarchy. And it's still existing today. The current vilification of patriarchy is really off base. Like, in fact, if you ask most, husband-wife couples, who runs the checkbook?
It's the woman.
Yeah, right. Where's the patriarchy? Who runs the schedule? Who raises the children? Who manages nutrition and food? Who manages the house? Who rules the house? It's the wife, or the woman, or the matriarchal figure. And now we don't acknowledge that as being what we value, because our version of expression of leadership is extra tribal. So it's the things that happen outside the tribe or the home, which is career and exploration and adventure and war and travel. That's the purview of men. But in all indigenous cultures, there is generally a intertribal matriarchal system, and then the men take on that baton when it's the stuff outside the tribe. So it's inherently harmonious, and that it's still happening today. It's but there has been some big shifts, really, since agriculture and primarily the Industrial Revolution, where we were no longer working at home. Men, we were not on the farm, and we didn't go to the blacksmith out in the garage, because that's where we worked from home. That was our vocation. So as soon as the Industrial Revolution happened and we went to the cities, now the women had to take over all the child raising and all the running of the home. And that was really the big break of when it comes to politics, when it comes to all of this decision making. It's been so separated from our home and versus what we do outside of the home. And the women have been excluded from all of that work. And I do believe that there is a feminization of men that is happening, that has been driven from this dynamic. And it's happened in two fronts. One of them is we were raised by our mothers. Our dads were not home. We didn't get to watch or live with our fathers as they interacted with other men. We never got to see their defeats and their conflict resolution and the way they solved problems. So we were raised by mothers. And so we're modeling off our mothers. And again, that's Iron John, which we'll talk about in a minute. Iron John is really the story of a prince leaving his mother's house and going to the father's house. And that's the core of Iron John. Secondly, we know there needs to be more of what you would call a sacred feminine in the world, right? Which is collaborative, and it's healthy, it's vital, right? That's part of what traditional women are nurturing. And so we recognize that that's not happening enough in the world. And so I think a lot of men are realizing that needs to be brought back into the world. And who's going to do it? Okay, I guess I'll be this kind, sacred, feminine caretaker, nurturing, and grow my hair long and not claim any power, because it's all toxic, all power. And so I see a lot of young men, embracing their sacred feminine, and I think it's a very poor strategy as our species, because the sacred feminine is inherently the purview of women. And so when we look at politics, there's more than 50% of the world that are feminine, women.
Hmm.
Why aren't there more women in politics? Vote.
There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Vote, ladies. Come on, claim your power. Pick up instead of just blaming us all the time. Lean into it, solve the problem. Solve it. Don't just complain about it. And get with us and help us solve it. And that's probably as political as I will go on your interview.
I got you. Okay, I appreciate the candid reply. Let me just pick your brain on something that you said. So matriarchy and was the kind of the tribal setting, but and again, here is where I need a little bit of clarity on that. Is if it was a matriarchal setup, why was there always a man who was the chief of the tribe, let's say? And I agree, like everything that you're saying, like to me, yep, actually that makes a lot of sense, especially in the relation to the woman looking after the children, woman looking after the bills, food, etc., the household. Yet there was a chief in charge. How does those two fit in together? Maybe because I'm missing something.
Well, it actually was a couple, because really what a tribe is an extended family. That's what a tribe is. A tribe is an extended family, and the couple that ran that tribe or that family is usually a grandparent. When my grandparents were alive, if we had a reunion, a big family reunion, they were the ruling couple, if you will. Like they were the ones that you would defer to. If there was a toast to give, if there was a formal thing that happened, it would be, the grandparents or whoever has that role. It is inherently, a harmonious balance of those two things. The reason why we think of a masculine chief is that since agriculture, right, and this is probably at least 10,000 years old, it's getting pushed back further and further, and agriculture was about, they called it 8,000 years ago in Mesopotamia, right, in the Middle East, and now they've pushed it back to 10,000 years in the Indus Valley, like southern India, and it's going back older and older.
Wow. But
since agriculture, we have had larger villages because we could raise more food. So number one, the moment where our tribes stopped becoming an extended family, of 10 to 20 people, that would be a tribe, and it became a village, you already started to see the honor-based cultures start to shift into pride-based cultures. And they got larger. And so as soon as you went from village to city, there's no more tribe. There's no more honor. It's now all of a bunch of individuals who need to have very structured and superficial laws to be able to maintain that. So size and also stability. We no longer traveled, because when you have agriculture, you stay with your crops, you start defending your crops, you start building permanent structures, claiming territory, and all of a sudden it becomes vitally important to defend your stuff. The moment you have to defend your territory, defend your things, defend your abundance, now men became central. We became the primary rulers because it was all about war and defense and things. So women started now collapsing back into running the families or the households, and men started to take on leadership of these larger experiments called cities.
I gotcha.
And eventually what you would call empires, right? Kingdoms. That didn't exist.
Mm.
That is a brand new experiment in the human journey,
Mm.
because for literally, Homo sapien has been around the planet for about 300,000 years. But if you want to include the hominid, family,
Mm.
us, for 6 million years, there is no kingdom, there's no territory, there is no my land and here's the boundaries. There's a small family system
Mm.
traveling around the world, surviving.
Hmm.
That's really what we're built to do at a genetic level. So all this strange exploration about politics and leadership and resources and legacy, it is artificial, to say the least.
Mm.
And artificial times require artificial structures. We have to either go back, which we're not going to do, or we're going to go forward and we're going to create systems to shore up our lack of nutrition. Well, take vitamins. We don't exercise enough. Go to the gym. We don't, we're taking on more trauma, right, than ever before. Okay, well, meditate. These are all artificial solutions to brand new problems. And that is a requirement now of our journey, is that we need to hack the system and find out what works so we can be sustainably flourishing in this during the world. And we're not doing a good job at it.
Yeah, I can attest to that. Wow. Okay. So, okay, we went through a little bit about the history, the context, the background of how we ended up here. Now, to your point about feminization of men, and a lot, I think I heard this from, was it Carl Jung, who was saying that there's a lot of men are actually developmentally arrested. So they're operating from this boyhood or boy psychology, or I think you mentioned it, operation system. A man is listening to this message and like everything that you're saying is just hitting home for him. Like his natural question, I'd imagine, is going to be, what do we do? Like, what do I do from here? Like, where do I go?
Men have always, in our adolescence, been feminine in many ways, because we've been raised by, not only do we not have testosterone that doesn't hit till puberty, but we're always have been raised in our mother's house. And what our mothers did for us is they domesticated us. And we need to be domesticated, because if we didn't train young boys to function in the world, they'd be monkeys. We would just be savage apes. We would just throw shit at each other all the time. Like, we would be savages. So our mothers, and we would also probably kill each other and kill ourselves. We jump out of trees, we do stupid shit. So what our mothers do is they domesticate us, right? They teach us to be nice, and they keep us safe. That's what our mothers do. And thank you. We would probably go extinct without those things. But being polite and safe is obviously not enough, because being polite and safe makes us inadequate, and it turns us into nice guys. Nice guys who are unable to speak their truth or be authentic or get in touch with their wild man. And we believe that if we can just be nicer and nicer and nicer, at some point, the world or our mothers will finally give us what we want. And we're very frustrated that the world has not given us what we want. And so we become more feminine and more nice and more politically correct and more careful and more apologetic, because eventually that the world will finally see that we're worthy of all these things that we want. And it will never happen. In fact, we're getting less and less and less of what we want, because men need to go from their mother's house, which is domestication and safety, and go to the father's house, which is about service. And That process is called initiation, to be initiated into your father's house. And it means that the boy has to die. The prince psychology or operating system has to die and be replaced by the mature male operating system, which is about no longer seeking external validation from your mother or the women in your life, but the currency of service, kingdom, significance. That's ultimately where we thrive as men. But if we're still playing in our mother's house and being a nice guy and wanting to please everyone, we're never going to get to our father's house. And so that's the reason why we see so much crippling inadequacy from men. They just continually feel inadequate because a prince is inadequate. A prince cannot fulfill his duties as a man. Kings do that. So how do you do that? That's the question. Because we have lost all of our initiation or rite of passage rituals in our society. So men's work is a reclamation. We are reclaiming initiation or a rite of passage. And no matter what version of men's group makes sense to you, there will be some form of exploring that scary place where you have to go into the cave and go see the monster. And the monster is you, always.
Yeah.
Wow. And adolescent men, princes, they believe that the monster in the cave is their dad or their mom or patriarchy or the government or whatever the external
fill in the blank
thing is.
It's never them.
And so if you're a prince, you're looking for a villain because you're obviously a victim. I mean, somebody is being mean to me. It's why I don't have what I want. So like somebody must be keeping me down or punishing me, and then somebody's going to save me. Like I can't wait to get saved. So, that little cycle of I'm a victim, somewhere there's a villain, somebody's going to save me is inherently the adolescent story. And it is rampant in our culture today of, the cancel culture and political correctness is that people are desperately looking for villains. Like somebody's got to be doing bad things that are causing all these problems. And the truth is that it's you. You, if you're an adult watching this interview, you are responsible for your life in its totality. So take your clothes off, look at yourself in the mirror. It's you. Look at your bank account. Look at your sex life. Look at your career. It's you. You are responsible for all that shit. And that's terrifying. So a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not ready for that one yet.
Yeah. I think that's probably one of the reasons why, again, this is just my theory, my take on things. I think one of the reasons why Jordan Peterson is, you could consider him as being a cultural father, because his big message is just responsibility, take responsibility. A lot of men don't want to hear that. And, coming back to, I think what you said about Iron John, I think there was a passage in the book where these nice men are life preserving, but not life giving. So there's a lot of that, I think, happening in today's culture. Like all of these young men are just like looking for meaning, but nobody's really taking responsibility. It's very easy to start blaming people, like you mentioned, cancel culture, wokeness, etc., etc.
The reason why is that people aren't afraid of failure. Like the inadequate men, we're not afraid of failure. What we're afraid of is what success is going to require from you. We're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of what success will require from you. Every man watching this, knows what you should be watching, right? On this amazing little box, you know what you should be watching and what you should not be watching. Okay, you know what you should be eating and not eating. You know who you should be hanging out with and not hanging out. You know, right? And why aren't you doing it? And the reason for that is that it's going to require sacrifice. You are going to have to suffer. Now, you're going to suffer either way. No matter what, you suffer. You can't avoid suffering. But again, Jordan Peterson says, if you choose the path of suffering that has meaning, it makes sense, right? But if you choose the path of suffering that has no meaning, eventually you're going to go into a very dark place, which is filled with depression, anxiety, addiction. And at the very bottom of that hole is suicide. Suicide is the ultimate response to a life without meaning. So men, and I will say like men, capital M, king, adult, and initiated men recognize that their suffering is not irrelevant, but it is an easy price to pay for the kingdom, right? So they will sacrifice what they want now for what they really want. Adolescent men cannot sacrifice or defer gratification for what they want long term. So they're constantly looking for short-term fixes. And even in the men's work community, and I know you just got back from a men's group, we must be vigilant about running away from society and finding escape in all of these retreats, right? There's an aspect of what's called spiritual bypass. A spiritual bypass is avoiding really looking at yourself and looking at how the big challenges are the ones that are existing where you are right now. You don't have to go somewhere else to go deal with those problems, because the problems are here. The problems are what's in your refrigerator right now, what's on your phone right now, who are your coworkers right now, who are your neighbors, who are your lovers. Like, what's happening right now is the problem, and that's where the solution is as well. And a lot of men want to leave all of that and go off to I don't know if you know what Burning Man is.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah,
it's an escape, and it's called spiritual bypass, to think that you're going to find some solution outside of the current world that we're having right now. And that's kind of a risky thing too. And I see a lot of obviously men doing that, or people who are looking for a quick fix with a diet or some other version of things. Porn, that's a quick fix. It's like, I don't want to actually deal with my relationship. I'm going to go do that.
Yeah.
Wow. So again, that's all adolescent. If you're running away from your problems to go find some solution, you're spiritually bypassing, and you're perpetuating that loop of avoiding the real problems, which are you. Because no matter where you go, you are there. It's all about you.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily probably what a lot of men want to hear, but actually this is what they need to hear right now. But some of them might say, but okay, Philip, this is all well and good, but I didn't have a father figure, or there aren't any mature masculine role models in my life. And that's really a shame. I think we've neglected a lot of our elders, even both in the kind of Western culture. I'm here in Eastern Europe, but that's also been a thing. Like, everybody's been a little bit segregated away from the family. So how does one deal with that? Or what are some actionable takeaways for men like that?
It's a really, really good question, and it's something that I and all of my Cape War brothers over here are exploring, because almost none of the men that I know had this benevolent, wise, masculine figure who was bringing us into a healthy masculinity. And I think we've had to find pieces of him in men, and there's pieces of men that are like my drill sergeant in the army. Like I recognized there was something exalted about him, and there's he still lives in me a little bit. So I think that we're finding pieces of those men, and then I believe that it exists in our mythology. Our mythology are the instructional tales that have been created from the depths of our history, and they contain all of the lessons and the metaphors that we really need. Like that's the most ancient wisdom source. And so whatever makes sense for you in terms of mythology, there's a big rise in people rediscovering Norse mythology, right? With Odin and Thor and the ravens and there's a lot of men who are exploring this as there's wonderful stories in Norse mythology. It's the same stories that are in Greek mythology, same themes, same exact themes. The hero has to sacrifice himself. He's reborn in a new version. He has to go on a quest. He returns with vitality to the kingdom. I mean, it's the same story over and over and over. So whether it be the Bible or Greek mythology or Native American, like whatever made sense for you. And we've been alluding a lot to Iron John, and this comes from your, this is your world.
Yeah.
This is Eastern European, right? That's an Eastern European fairy tale about initiation. So the fact that men around the world are reading Iron John is just, we're sharing our mythological structure. And the wild man who is Iron John, in many ways, he is an embodiment of that powerful masculine authenticity that none of us had. Well, but we're reading about him. He's in all of those stories. It's there.
Yeah.
So read your mythology and discuss it. A lot of times men don't have the. Do you know what the Rosetta Stone is?
No.
Okay, the Rosetta Stone is a big chunk of black granite that they discovered in the 1800s because they could not understand what hieroglyphics were, the Egyptian writing. Nobody had any way of unlocking what that pictograph language was. We couldn't figure it out at all. And so when they found the Rosetta Stone, it was a big piece of black granite, and it had the three languages. There was Greek and Egyptian hieroglyphics, and then some other Semitic, or it was some other language. It was we could see now how the language worked, because we could see, oh, here's the Greek word, and then here's the Egyptian hieroglyphics. It unlocked the new language for us. So that's called a Rosetta Stone.
Gotcha.
And so a Rosetta Stone is a way to give you a lens or an angle of approach about unlocking the secret systems within some other version. So a lot of times that's mythology requires that. You need to be able to look at having a discussion about metaphor.
I got you. And then look at some of these.
I'm going to shut my door real quick.
Sure. Yeah, I
My
was just
daughter's being loud in the other room.
no, no worries, no worries. Yeah, looking at some of these classics like Iron John or King Warrior Magician Lover, or I think you also referenced in some other interviews, uh, Joseph Campbell. You know, so that's like, yeah, like I can see the metaphor, and that's kind of the Rosetta Stone for a lot of men. I think they're gonna find a lot of the answers there, even though probably I need to hear it from someone like Robert Bly to actually really start to see the deeper meaning into the books, because sometimes you read a book and you just take it at face value and you're like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah.
So the hero's journey is the plot line for all of these stories.
Yes.
It's a classic series of events that happen in a story, right? And the reason why every story that falls into that one of those big master myths, whether it be the Avengers or Harry Potter or Rocky or Star Wars or pick your mythology, any of them. Jesus Christ, it goes on his hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why it's the same story is that it's our story. It is the psychological roadmap for the way that we move through the unknown. It is unavoidable. And again, the hero's journey is an example of a Rosetta Stone that unlocks not only mythology, but our life. It tells us, and I'll quote Joseph Campbell or Jordan Peterson, he refers to any of these maps as something that fulfills three, vital steps. And the first one is, where are you now on your hero's journey? Where are you? Career, fitness, relationship. Where are you currently on this hero's journey? Because it opens up the second step, which is, okay, where do I need to go? So if I'm here, where do I need to go next to be able to move this journey forward? And then lastly, which is the big question, it's not where or how, it's who do you need to be to get there? Because who you currently are is inadequate to get to where you want to go. And this is the reason why princes are so crippled by this, is that we don't want to be found out that we don't currently have the tools to get to where we want to go. That's a given. That's where the hero's journey starts. Rocky is inadequate. Harry Potter is inadequate. Jesus Christ was inadequate until he fully accepted who he was. And he had to be crucified before he was resurrected. All these characters die before they're reborn. And really that's a metaphor for the way you currently are now is not going to get you to where you want to go. And that is really the very root of the hero's journey. And it's the root of our life. It's the root of men's work, is that cycle is endless. We are constantly bumping up against that moment.
Okay. For people listening, find your hero's journey and really take the leap, take the first step. One actually a couple more questions before we wrap up, because so time has advanced. Where we are right now, with all the issues that you said are happening right now in the world, culturally, there's a huge shifts happening. Tectonic plates are moving from what I can see, especially in the West and the US. Men being the way they are right now, maybe a little bit avoiding responsive. I'm overgeneralizing here. I get that. What can we do right now to help future generations so they don't have to go through the same trauma? There's still going to be some trauma there, but how can we, what can we do?
Well, men for thousands of years have been in the driver's seat of our species and of our planet. Like, we are the caretakers of our planet. And we have been behaving like it's not. We've been behaving like, how do I get my needs met? All of us. have been focused on our individual needs. And so a couple things, just like, and to be very transparent with all the men watching, we are the problem. We are the ones that have waged war. We are the ones that rape other people and have destroyed the environment. That's us. Okay. But on the other end, just about everything that has allowed us the opportunity to think about the subjects that you and I are talking about today is incredible privilege. The fact that we get to be on the internet right now talking about philosophy means that you and I are not worried about getting eaten. You and I have food in the other room. You and I have water that comes out of a hole in the wall. You and I don't worry about anything except for existential problems. Thank you, men. Thanks for that. So give us our credit. We built the world. Now we have also built all of the trauma into the world. So it is our duty, it is our responsibility to be able to fully own both of those things. Like own your power, own the destructive nature of that power, and start behaving in a more benevolent fashion. Like a benevolent king is a good, healthy, generative man, right? He's not weak, he's ferociously powerful. And we are never going to solve this by surrendering power and villainizing men and apologizing for masculinity. Being, the word patriarchy that has become a derogatory term. It's not a derogatory term. In the same way, matriarchy is not a derogatory term. And so that's the journey. That is the reclamation of a more of a mature masculinity that the world is going to require if we're going to be able to get through this. There's some big scary monsters loose in the woods right now. And again, Jordan Peterson said, if you're gonna go fight a dragon, you should go to its lair, otherwise it comes to your village. And we have shirked that responsibility. We have not gone out to the dragon. So the dragon is now here. The dragon is now in the village. And we can see it with all the depression and anxiety and suicide and addiction and all of that destructive nature of the world right now. That's the dragon. And it's not all gloom and doom. It's actually a incredibly exciting time. And I've been in the leadership field again for decades, and I consult with big organizations, and so I know leadership really well. And I have never seen a quality of integration, applied leadership, as I'm seeing in the men's community right now. So I can rattle off a list of men and men's groups that are doing extraordinary work right now. Traber Bohm, Ryan Michler, obviously K4. There's some extraordinary applied leadership that it is operating at a level that I don't know has ever happened in the world. Like we are bringing, and again, the entire wisdom source of our species is on whatever box you're watching. This interview right now contains the wisdom of every prophet, every sage, every guru. Go get it. After you watch this, turn off your shitty Instagram and YouTube and start mining the elder wisdom and implement it in your life, because that's where we are. That's the battle is joined right now. And if you're out in the back running away, either going to retreats or watching porn or on a YouTube rabbit hole, like we need you up here on the front line, handling some of these big things. And I encourage any man who is committed to growth and service. Those are the values of K4. So if you are interested in a community and a journey, and we run a 13-week rite of passage. So it takes 13 weeks. It's all online, but you are part of a live community. So we use Zoom, and you're part of a community that takes you through this process. If you're ready for that and you're committed to that, then please inquire. And the website is k4men.com. And if our brand is either too robust or not robust enough, go get yourself one of those. But whatever it is, find yourself a men's group, because the time of the lone wolf is over. And God, I think it was Nietzsche. He said, only gods and monsters live alone. So get you a pack.
Wow. Amen to that. Like, wow. What a way to finish the interview. One last question before we wrap up. Was there something that you wanted me to ask you that I didn't?
Oh boy. We could spend days. There's just so much, but it was great hanging out with you.
I appreciate it. You did already say k4mens.com.
Yep.
People that resonate with your message, with your energy, with your passion for all of this. Any other outlets where they can find you apart from that?
Yeah, obviously I'm on the Instagram and the Facebook.
Yeah.
And and eventually, hey, this is going to be out on those platforms too, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
I try to put out as much of this message on as many platforms as I can. So you can find me on any of those, and there you go.
Okay, I'll be sure to put some notes and links to your platform so people can actually come and connect. Well, that's all for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. This has been an incredibly potent interview. I certainly need to go and rewatch it maybe a number of times. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.
All right, buddy.